CEO panics without a French translator until the janitor's daughter takes control and the conference room's silence was worth $30 million a second, and Alexander Beaumont, CEO of Beaumont Industries, felt every penny slipping through his fingers as his mouth opened and closed like a goldfish drowning in air, until a soft voice from the doorway whispered in perfect French, "Perhaps I can help," and changed 2 lives forever, when French words meant everything. Hello, my wonderful friends. Welcome back to another incredible story that will touch your heart and remind you that love can bloom in the most unexpected places. How have you been since our last journey together? I hope life has been treating you kindly, and if it hasn't, well, that's why we're here. To remind ourselves that even in the darkest moments, extraordinary things can happen. Before we dive into today's emotional adventure, please take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that like button if these stories bring light to your day. And don't forget to share with someone who needs to believe in love again. Your support means the world and helps us reach more hearts that need these stories. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt completely out of control, only to have help come from the most unexpected place? Share your story below. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do. Thanks. Now let me tell you about 2 souls whose paths were about to cross in the most beautiful and unexpected way. The 42nd floor of the Beaumont Industries building touched the sky like a glass and steel prayer, and from his corner office, Alexander Beaumont could see the entire city spread below him like a conquered kingdom. At 35, he had everything the world said mattered. A company valued at $3 billion, a penthouse apartment that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime, and a reputation for turning failing businesses into gold. But at 5:47 a.m. on this particular Tuesday morning, as he stood watching the sunrise paint the cityscape in shades of amber and rose, Alexander felt the familiar hollow ache in his chest, the one that reminded him that kingdoms meant nothing when you ruled them alone. His reflection in the window showed a man crafted for boardrooms. Perfectly tailored charcoal suit, dark hair precisely styled, steel gray eyes that could dissect a contract or destroy a competitor's argument with equal precision. Yet sometimes, in moments like these when the office was empty and the city was just waking up, he caught glimpses of the boy he used to be. The one who believed success would feel different than this. "Mr. Beaumont," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom, startling him from his reverie. "The Geneva contracts are ready for your review, and I've confirmed the French delegation's arrival for next Monday." "Thank you, Patricia," he responded, his voice carrying the kind of authority that came from never having to repeat himself. "And the translator?" "Marchand and Associates confirmed their best will be here. Everything is arranged. Everything is arranged." If only life were truly that simple. Alexander turned from the window and settled behind his massive mahogany desk, pushing away the strange unease that had been plaguing him lately. He had built his empire on control, on ensuring that every variable was accounted for, every possibility anticipated. The upcoming meeting with the French technology firm would be his company's largest acquisition yet, a deal that would cement Beaumont Industries as a global powerhouse. He opened the first contract, forcing himself to focus on the familiar language of mergers and acquisitions, letting the numbers and clauses fill the empty spaces in his mind. This was what he knew, what he was good at. This was enough. It had to be. 20 floors below, in a small break room that most Beaumont Industries employees didn't even know existed, Celeste Moreau carefully balanced her laptop on a folding table that wobbled with every keystroke. The fluorescent light above flickered intermittently, casting strange shadows across her thesis notes spread before her. She had 40 minutes before her shift at the university library began, just enough time to review her conclusion one more time. International Business Relations in the Digital Age. A comparative analysis of French and American corporate culture. 2 years of research condensed into 300 pages that her professors called brilliant and groundbreaking. Words that should have opened doors but instead seemed to echo in the void of unanswered job applications. "Celeste, ma chérie, you should go." Her mother's voice came softly from behind her. Marie Moreau stood in the doorway wearing the gray uniform of Spotless Cleaning Services, her silver hair pulled back in the same neat bun she'd worn for the past 15 years. Despite the early hour and the thankless work ahead, her mother's eyes held the same warmth that had carried Celeste through every challenge. "Just 5 more minutes, maman," Celeste replied in French, their preferred language when alone. I want to perfect this paragraph about cross-cultural communication barriers. Marie moved closer, placing a weathered hand on her daughter's shoulder. You've been perfecting it for months. At some point, ma petite étoile, you have to believe it's enough. My little star. The nickname made Celeste's throat tight. How many floors had her mother cleaned to help pay for the education that was supposed to change everything? How many nights had she worked while Celeste studied, believing that merit and hard work would be enough to break through the invisible barriers that separated people like them from people like? I know you're disappointed about the Hartman Industries position, her mother continued gently. But something better will come. It always does for those who persist. Celeste closed her laptop, not wanting her mother to see the email she'd received yesterday. Another rejection, this one particularly cruel in its brevity. While your qualifications are impressive, we've decided to go with a candidate who is a better cultural fit for our organization. Cultural fit. She knew what that meant. It meant someone whose parents had the right last names, attended the right country clubs, moved in the right circles. It meant not being the daughter of a cleaning lady, no matter how many degrees she earned or languages she spoke. You're right, Maman, she said, forcing a smile as she gathered her papers. I should go. Will you be late tonight? The executive floors always take longer, Marie replied, straightening her uniform. So much glass to clean, and they notice every streak. But the overtime helps. Celeste hugged her mother tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of lavender soap and the faint chemical tang that never quite washed out. Be careful on the wet floors. Your knee has carried me this far and will carry me further still, Marie finished, the same response she always gave. Now go. The world is waiting for what you have to offer, even if it doesn't know it yet. As Celeste made her way through the building's service corridors toward the employee exit, she passed by the main lobby where morning shift executives were beginning to arrive. They moved with purpose and certainty, designer heels clicking against marble, expensive cologne trailing in their wake. None of them noticed her. The invisible girl with the laptop bag and the second-hand coat, daughter of the woman who would clean their offices tonight. But Celeste noticed everything. She noticed how they held their phones, the way they gestured while talking, the subtle power dynamics in their groupings. Her thesis hadn't just been academic exercise. It had been anthropology, studying a world she could see but not enter. The security guard, Thomas, gave her a warm smile as she signed out. He'd known her since she was 12, doing homework in the break room while waiting for her mother. Early morning again, Miss Celeste? Always, Thomas. Knowledge doesn't sleep. Neither do those who chase it, he replied with a knowing look. You remind me of my granddaughter. Same fire in the eyes. She's a doctor now, you know. First in our family. That's wonderful, Celeste said, meaning it. Every success story from someone like them was a small victory against the odds. Your time will come, Thomas said firmly. I've been here 23 years, seen a lot of people come and go. The ones who last, who really make it. They're not always the ones you'd expect. Celeste wished she had his faith. As she stepped out into the crisp morning air, she looked up at the towering building, its windows beginning to glow with interior light. Somewhere up there, decisions were being made that shaped industries and influenced lives. Somewhere up there, her mother would soon be pushing her cleaning cart through hushed corridors, invisible but essential. And somewhere between those two worlds, the one that made messes and the one that cleaned them up, Celeste existed, belonging fully to neither but understanding both in ways that her professors said made her exceptional. Exceptional. Another word that should have meant more than it did. Her phone buzzed with a text from her study partner at the library. Coffee's ready. Bring your brain. We have that international law review to finish. Celeste smiled despite herself. Maybe her mother was right. Maybe something better was coming. Maybe the universe had plans that she couldn't see yet. Connections waiting to be made in the most unlikely places. As she walked toward the bus stop, she practiced her French presentation for her evening class, the words flowing like music. Languages had always come easily to her. French from her mother, English from necessity, Spanish from the neighbors, Mandarin from sheer determination. Each language was a key to a different world, a different way of thinking. She just hadn't found the door that her keys would open yet. Back in his office, Alexander had moved from contracts to emails, his fingers flying across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. The French deal consumed his thoughts, not just because of its size, but because of what it represented. Beaumont Industries had started as a small investment firm, built from the ashes of his father's betrayal. Every acquisition, every success, was another brick in the wall between who he'd been and who he'd become. Trust no one but yourself. His father's last words before disappearing with everything. The family business, their savings, even the house Alexander's mother had inherited from her parents. Alexander had been 22, fresh out of college, suddenly responsible for his mother's cancer treatments and his younger sister's education. That was 13 years ago. His mother had passed despite his efforts, but not before seeing him rebuild what was stolen. His sister was a surgeon now, married with twins he saw only on holidays. Success had given him the power to protect those he loved, but it had also isolated him in ways he was only beginning to understand. His phone rang, New York calling about the quarterly projections, then London about the currency fluctuations, then Tokyo about the supply chain issues. Each call was a reminder of the empire he'd built, the hundreds of employees who depended on him, the shareholders who trusted his judgment. But between the calls, in those brief moments of silence, that hollow feeling returned. Patricia knocked and entered with his coffee. Ethiopian single origin, exactly 183 degrees, 1 sugar, no cream. She'd worked for him for 5 years and could anticipate his needs with uncanny accuracy. "Sir, there's been a small change to Monday's schedule. The French delegation has requested to move the meeting up to 3 p.m. instead of 4. Shall I confirm?" "Fine," Alexander said without looking up. "And Patricia, make sure we have the usual spread from Lawrence. The delegates appreciated it last time." "Of course, sir." "Also," she hesitated, which was unusual. Patricia never hesitated. Alexander looked up. "What is it?" "Security mentioned there's been someone accessing the building very early mornings. A young woman, apparently the daughter of one of our cleaning staff. She's been using the break room on 22 to study. They wanted to know if you'd like them to restrict access." Something about the story made Alexander pause. A daughter studying in a break room while her parent cleaned offices. It reminded him of his own college years, studying in the hospital cafeteria while his mother underwent treatments. "Is she causing any problems?" "No, sir. Thomas in security says she's very respectful. Cleans up after herself, never goes anywhere she shouldn't." "Then leave her be," Alexander said, returning to his screen. "Education shouldn't be punished." Patricia smiled, a rare occurrence. "Very good, sir." As she left, Alexander found himself thinking about the unnamed student. What was she studying in those early morning hours? What dreams was she chasing in a break room 20 floors below? He shook his head, annoyed at his own distraction. He had an empire to run, a deal to close. He couldn't afford to waste time on sentiment. But still the thought lingered. Celeste's day at the library passed in a blur of returned books, whispered consultations, and stolen moments with her own research. Her supervisor, Mrs. Chun, occasionally caught her reading French business journals during slow periods, but never said anything. Mrs. Chun understood ambition constrained by circumstance. "You know," Mrs. Chun said during their afternoon break, "my nephew works at Beaumont Industries. They're always looking for translators for their international dealings." Celeste's heart jumped, then sank. "I've applied there. 3 times. Never even got an interview. Through HR. Where else would I apply?" Mrs. Chin gave her a knowing look. "Sometimes the front door isn't the only way in, Celeste. Sometimes you have to find the side entrances. I won't use my mother's position to." "I'm not suggesting anything unethical," Mrs. Chin interrupted gently. "I'm suggesting you be where opportunity might find you. The universe has a funny way of arranging things when we put ourselves in the right place." That evening, as Celeste made her way back to the Beaumont building to have dinner with her mother before her night shift, she thought about Mrs. Chen's words. The right place. But what was the right place for someone like her? She found her mother in the break room, heating up the soup they'd share. Other members of the cleaning crew nodded in greeting. They'd watched Celeste grow up in these rooms, celebrated her graduations, encouraged her dreams. "How was your day, ma chérie?" "Educational," Celeste replied, which was what she always said. She didn't mention the rejection letters, or the growing fear that education without connection meant nothing in this world. They ate in companionable silence, the break room filled with the soft voices of other workers preparing for their shifts. These were her people. Hardworking, invisible, essential. But Celeste had always felt caught between their world and the one she glimpsed through her education, fitting perfectly in neither. "I'll be working the 42nd floor tonight," her mother mentioned casually. "The executive suite. They say the CEO works very late, sometimes past midnight." "Alexander Beaumont," Celeste said. She'd researched him, of course. 35, self-made, brilliant, and ruthless in equal measure. The business journals painted him as a man who'd risen from nothing to everything through sheer force of will. "You know of him?" "I wrote a case study on his acquisition strategy for my thesis. He has an interesting approach to international partnerships. Very American in some ways, but with an understanding of cultural nuance that's rare." Her mother smiled. "My daughter, analyzing CEOs over soup in a break room. Knowledge doesn't care where it's discussed, man." "No," her mother agreed. "But sometimes I wish." She trailed off, but Celeste knew what she wished. The same thing Celeste wished every day. That merit mattered more than birthright, that intelligence could overcome circumstance, that the world was as fair as they'd always pretended it was. After dinner, Celeste settled into her usual spot to study while her mother began her shift. The building transformed at night. The frenetic energy of day replaced by the quiet industry of those who maintain the illusion of effortless success. She liked these hours, when she could pretend the building was hers to explore, its knowledge hers to absorb. She was deep in a French technical manual when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Not the soft shoes of the cleaning crew, but the confident stride of someone who belonged in these halls during daylight hours. She looked up to see a man in an expensive suit pause at the break room door, seeming surprised to find anyone there. Even if she hadn't researched him, she would have known who he was. Alexander Beaumont carried authority like a second skin, from his perfectly tailored clothes to the way he occupied space. But what struck her most were his eyes, gray like winter storms, sharp with intelligence, but holding something else. Something that looked almost like recognition, though they'd never met. "I'm sorry," Celeste said quickly, beginning to gather her papers. "I know I'm not supposed to." "You're the student," he said, not a question. "The one who studies here in the mornings." She froze, uncertain whether this was a prelude to being banned from the building. "My mother works here. Marie Moreau, with the cleaning crew." "I promise I don't." "I know who you are," he said, which surprised them both. He clarified. "Security mentioned you. Said you were very respectful of the space." "I try to be invisible," Celeste said, then immediately wished she hadn't. It revealed too much about how she saw herself in this world. Something flickered across his face. Understanding, perhaps, or memory. "Invisible," he repeated softly. "Yes, I remember that feeling." They stood there for a moment, executive and cleaner's daughter, separated by 20 floors and $20 million, but connected by something neither could name. Then, as quickly as he'd appeared, he was gone, continuing down the hall toward whatever late-night business demanded his attention. Celeste stared at the empty doorway, her heart racing for reasons she didn't understand. She'd had a conversation, brief as it was, with Alexander Beaumont. He'd looked at her not with dismissal or condescension, but with something that felt like recognition. She returned to her studies, but the French words swam before her eyes. Something had shifted in those few moments. Some invisible barrier had cracked. She didn't know what it meant, didn't dare hope it meant anything at all. But for the first time in months, the hollow ache of repeated rejection felt less consuming. Meanwhile, Alexander stood in his office, looking out at the city lights and wondering why a brief encounter with a cleaning lady's daughter had shaken his carefully ordered world. There had been something in her eyes, intelligence, yes, but more than that. A hunger he recognized, a determination that reminded him of himself before success had built walls around his heart. He'd said he knew who she was, and in that moment, he'd meant more than just her name. He knew the weight of being invisible in a world that only saw surfaces. He knew the exhaustion of fighting for every inch of progress. He knew the fear that no matter how hard you worked, it might never be enough. Trust no one but yourself. His father's words echoed, as they always did when he felt his defenses weakening. But for the first time in years, Alexander wondered if those words were wisdom or prison bars. He returned to his contracts, to the familiar world of numbers and negotiations. The French deal required his full attention. Too much depended on it. He couldn't afford distractions, couldn't afford to wonder about a young woman studying in a break room, couldn't afford to remember what it felt like to hope for more than just success. But as the night wore on and the building settled into its quiet rhythm, Alexander found himself thinking about invisible people and visible dreams, about the distance between floors that measured more than just height, and about the unexpected moments when two worlds might collide. 20 floors below, Celeste packed up her things as her mother's shift neared its end. She would go home to their small apartment, sleep a few hours, then rise to do it all again. Study, work, hope. But tonight felt different somehow. Tonight, she'd been seen by someone who mattered in the world she was trying to enter. It wasn't much. It might be nothing. But in a life built on almosts and not quites, even the possibility of something felt like everything. As mother and daughter left the building together, arm in arm against the cold night air, neither noticed the figure standing at the window 42 floors above, watching them disappear into the city. Alexander stood there long after they'd gone, wondering why he felt like he'd just missed something important, wondering why the hollow ache in his chest seemed suddenly sharper. Change was coming to Beaumont Industries, though none of them knew it yet. It would arrive in the form of a crisis and a coincidence, a moment of desperation and an offer of help. It would speak in French and break down walls built over years of pain. But that was still days away. For now, there was only the night and the building and the invisible threads beginning to weave between two souls who didn't yet know they were searching for each other. In her apartment, Celeste dreamed in French, words flowing like rivers toward an unknown destination. In his penthouse, Alexander stared at contracts he couldn't focus on, haunted by gray eyes that held too much understanding. And somewhere between their two worlds, destiny was preparing to speak in a language they both would understand. The universe, Celeste would later think, had a peculiar sense of timing. Monday arrived wrapped in unseasonable rain that turned the city into an impressionist painting, all blurred edges and reflected lights. She'd spent the weekend polishing her thesis, sending out 3 more job applications, and practicing her presentation for her evening seminar. The rejections had become so routine that she barely flinched anymore when they arrived. Always politely worded, always essentially the same message. You're qualified, but not quite right for us. She wasn't supposed to be at Beaumont Industries that morning, but her mother had called at dawn, her voice thick with the flu that had been circulating through the cleaning crew. I can't miss work, Celeste. Not with your tuition payment due next month. Man, you can barely stand. Stay in bed. I'll handle it. You don't have to. I know I don't have to, but I'm going to. Which was how Celeste found herself pushing a cleaning cart through the 42nd floor at 2:47 p.m. on a Monday afternoon, wearing her mother's uniform and trying to remain invisible as executives rushed past, speaking in urgent tones. She'd called in sick to the library. Mrs. Chun had understood immediately, even offered to cover her shift without docking pay. The executive floor was different in daylight, alive with an energy that made the air itself feel electric. Through the glass walls of offices, she could see the city's power brokers at work, men and women who shaped industries with phone calls and signatures. She kept her head down, focusing on her task, emptying waste baskets and wiping down surfaces that were already spotless. She was in the supply closet restocking when she heard the commotion. What do you mean he's in surgery? Alexander Beaumont's voice carried even through closed doors, sharp with barely controlled panic. The delegation is already on their way up. Celeste froze, her hands full of paper towels. She recognized that voice from their brief encounter, but this was different. Gone was the controlled authority. In its place was something raw and desperate. Sir, the hospital just called. Mr. Dubois was in a car accident on the way here. He's stable, but I don't care if he's stable. I need him here. The entire deal depends on these negotiations. We've contacted every translation service in the city. The earliest anyone can get here is 5 o'clock. They'll be here in 10 minutes. A crash, something thrown or dropped. 3 years of negotiations, Patricia. 3 years, and it all comes down to this meeting. Without proper translation, they'll think we're amateurs. They'll walk. Celeste's heart raced. She knew about this deal from her research, Beaumont Industries' expansion into the French renewable energy sector. It wasn't just about money. It was about positioning the company for the next decade. The French were notoriously particular about protocol and language. A machine translation or stumbling through with broken French would be seen as an insult. She should stay hidden. This wasn't her problem. She was the invisible cleaning lady's daughter, temporarily filling in, nothing more. But then she heard Alexander's voice again, lower now, talking to himself perhaps. I can't lose this. Not this. There was something in those words, a desperation that went beyond business, a fear that spoke of deeper stakes. Before she could think better of it, Celeste stepped out of the supply closet. The hallway was chaos. Associates ran between offices with papers, phones rang incessantly, and at the center of it all stood Alexander Beaumont, his perfect composure shattered. His tie was loosened, his hair disheveled from running his hands through it, and his gray eyes held a wild look she recognized. The look of someone watching everything they'd built threaten to crumble. Patricia noticed her first. Maintenance staff aren't supposed to be on this floor during business hours. But Alexander had turned at her words, and their eyes met. Recognition flickered across his face. You, the student. Celeste's mouth was dry, her hands trembling slightly. Every instinct told her to apologize and retreat. But something else, something stronger, pushed her forward. The French delegation, she said quietly. I heard you need a translator. Patricia laughed, a sharp sound. This isn't a student project, girl. We need a professional. Je peux vous aider. Celeste continued in perfect Parisian French, then switched to English. I can help you. I have a master's degree in international business relations with a focus on French-American corporate communications. I've written extensively on the cultural nuances of French business negotiations. I speak 5 languages fluently, and I've studied this specific deal as part of my thesis research. The hallway went silent. Even the phones seemed to pause their ringing. Alexander stared at her, and in his eyes, she saw him truly seeing her for the first time. Not the cleaning lady's daughter, not the invisible student, but someone who might just save everything. You know about our deal with Rousseau Industries? I know you've been negotiating for 37 months. I know they're particularly concerned about your commitment to environmental standards, which is why you've restructured your entire supply chain. I know the delegation is led by Madame Sylvie Rousseau herself, who values precision in language and views translation as a test of respect. I know. Stop. Alexander held up a hand. His voice was steady now, the panic replaced by laser focus. Can you do simultaneous translation? Technical terms? Legal language? Yes. Have you ever translated for a business negotiation? Celeste's hesitation was answer enough. Sir, Patricia interjected, we can't possibly. We don't have a choice. Alexander's gaze never left Celeste's face. What's your name? Celeste Moreau. Celeste. He said it like he was testing the weight of it. In approximately 7 minutes, 3 French executives are going to walk through those doors expecting to finalize a deal worth 500 million euros. My company's future, hundreds of jobs, depend on this going perfectly. Can you do this? The weight of it crashed over her. This wasn't a test or a thesis project. This was real with real consequences. She thought of her mother, sick in bed, who'd cleaned these floors for 15 years. She thought of every rejection letter, every door closed in her face. She thought of the dreams she'd polished in break rooms and library corners. I can do this, she said, and meant it. Alexander studied her for another heartbeat, then made a decision that would change both their lives. Patricia, get her a visitor badge. Conference room A. Now. But sir. Now, Patricia. As Patricia rushed off, Alexander stepped closer to Celeste. This close, she could see the strain around his eyes, smell his expensive cologne mixed with the sharp scent of stress. I'm taking an enormous risk trusting you, he said quietly. Please don't make me regret it. I won't, Celeste promised, her voice stronger than she felt. But I need to know, is there anything specific about your negotiation strategy one should be aware of? Any terms you've agreed to that might come up? Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, that she was thinking strategically. Conference room A. I'll brief you on the way. He turned and strode down the hallway, expecting her to follow. Celeste abandoned the cleaning cart and matched his pace, her mind racing to recall everything she'd studied about Rousseau Industries. She was still wearing her mother's gray uniform, but there was no time to change. The main sticking point has been environmental guarantees, Alexander said as they walked, his words rapid and precise. We've agreed to reduce carbon emissions by 40% over 5 years, but they want 50%. We can do 45%, maybe 47%, but not 50% without compromising profitability. They'll push on that, Celeste said. Madame Rousseau made her reputation on environmental advocacy. It's not just business for her, it's personal. Her daughter has severe asthma. Alexander stopped walking. How could you possibly know that? I read a profile in Le Figaro last month. She mentioned it briefly when discussing why she moved Rousseau Industries toward green technology. If you frame the compromise as protecting future generations, specifically children's health, she'll be more receptive. He stared at her with something that might have been awe. Who are you? Before she could answer, the elevator chimed. Patricia appeared with a visitor badge, and through the glass doors they could see 3 figures stepping out. 2 men in impeccable suits and a woman who could only be Madame Sylvie Rousseau, her silver hair elegant, her bearing regal. "Show time," Alexander murmured, straightening his tie. Then to Celeste, "Stay close. Translate everything, even the small talk." And Celeste, "Yes, thank you for stepping forward. Whatever happens." The next few seconds stretched like hours. Celeste clipped on the badge, smoothed her uniform as best she could, and followed Alexander toward the approaching delegation. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her mind was crystal clear. This was the moment, not just for him, but for her. Everything she'd studied, everything she'd prepared for, led to this. "Madame Rousseau," Alexander greeted, extending his hand. "Bienvenue à Beaumont Industries." The older woman's eyes swept over him, then landed on Celeste with sharp interest. She responded in rapid French, her tone formal but testing. "Monsieur Beaumont, I trust everything is prepared for our discussions? I was told you would have your usual translator." This was it. Celeste stepped forward slightly, her voice steady and clear. "Madame Rousseau, on behalf of Mr. Beaumont and Beaumont Industries, we're honored by your presence. There was an unexpected emergency with our regular translator, but I assure you, I'm fully prepared to facilitate our discussions with the precision and respect they deserve." Her French was flawless. Not just grammatically correct, but carrying the subtle formality and elegance that marked educated Parisian speech. Madame Rousseau's eyebrows rose slightly. "Vous êtes française?" she asked. "My mother is from Lyon," Celeste replied. "But I was educated here and in Paris. I had the privilege of studying at Sciences Po for a semester." "Sciences Po?" Now Madame Rousseau looked genuinely interested. "Under whom?" "Professor Michel Fontaine. He spoke highly of your work in sustainable development." A small smile touched the older woman's lips. "Michel is an old friend." "Very well. Shall we proceed?" As they walked toward the conference room, Alexander's hand briefly touched Celeste's elbow. So light she might have imagined it, but the warmth spread up her arm. In his touch was gratitude, relief, and something else. Trust, perhaps, or recognition of a kindred spirit. The conference room was a symphony of power, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the city, a massive oak table that had hosted deals worth billions, technology seamlessly integrated into every surface. Celeste had cleaned this room with her mother once, late at night, marveling at its grandeur. Now she was sitting at the table, positioned between Alexander and the French delegation. "Before we begin," Madame Rousseau said in French, settling into her chair with practiced grace, "I'm curious about your translator, Mr. Beaumont. She's not your usual choice." Celeste translated, watching Alexander's face remain carefully neutral. "Mademoiselle Moreau joined us recently," he replied smoothly. "I believe in recognizing talent wherever it's found." As Celeste translated his words, she felt the weight of them. He hadn't said she was replacing someone or filling in. He'd claimed her, professionally at least, as part of his team. "Indeed," Madame Rousseau murmured, her shrewd eyes studying Celeste. "And what is your background, Mademoiselle Moreau?" This was dangerous territory. Celeste could feel Patricia's disapproving stare, sense the tension from Alexander's associates. One wrong answer could undermine everything. "I have a master's degree in international business relations," she said in French, then translated for the room. "My thesis focused on Franco-American corporate partnerships, with particular emphasis on sustainable development initiatives. I've been following the evolution of your negotiations with great interest." "You've studied our negotiations?" "Public information only," Celeste clarified quickly. "Press releases, industry reports. The potential impact of this partnership extends far beyond the companies involved. It could set a new standard for international environmental cooperation." Madame Rousseau leaned back, a genuine smile now warming her face. "Your Mr. Beaumont has found himself a translator who understands more than just words. Shall we see if he understands the same?" And with that, the real negotiation began. For the next 2 hours, Celeste became a conduit between two worlds. She translated not just words but intentions, caught subtle implications and rendered them clearly, navigated the delicate dance of business, where what wasn't said mattered as much as what was. Her mind worked at lightning speed, drawing on every bit of knowledge she'd absorbed in her years of study. But more than that, she began to shape the conversation subtly. When discussions of environmental standards grew heated, she chose words that emphasized shared values rather than conflicting interests. When Madame Rousseau pushed for 50% emissions reduction, Celeste translated Alexander's counteroffer with language that acknowledged the moral imperative while underscoring practical limitations. "We're not simply negotiating percentages," she translated Alexander's words, adding a subtle emphasis that she knew would resonate with Madame Rousseau. "We're discussing our children's future. My commitment is to find the point where ambition meets achievability, where we can make real change rather than empty promises." Madame Rousseau's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Your daughter, how old is she now?" she asked Alexander in French. Celeste saw Alexander's confusion and quickly intervened. "Madame Rousseau is asking about children, but I believe she may be thinking of another executive. Mr. Beaumont, would you like to respond personally?" Alexander caught on quickly. "I don't have children yet, Madame Rousseau, but I hope to one day. And when I do, I want to be able to tell them I did everything possible to protect their world while building something that would last." As Celeste translated, she felt the shift in the room. The negotiation was becoming a conversation, adversaries becoming potential partners. She was doing more than translating. She was building bridges. 47%, Madame Rousseau said finally, with yearly reviews and a commitment to reaching 50% if technology allows. "Agreed," Alexander said without hesitation. The rest fell into place like dominoes: distribution rights, technology sharing, profit margins. Celeste's voice grew hoarse, but she never faltered. She was in her element, using every skill she'd honed in those early morning study sessions, every insight gleaned from countless hours of research. When Madame Rousseau finally stood, extending her hand to Alexander, the deal was struck. 500 million euros, partnerships that would reshape both companies, and a framework for environmental cooperation that would indeed set new standards. "Your translator," Madame Rousseau said to Alexander in English, surprising everyone. "She is extraordinary. In my experience, the best partnerships are built on understanding, not just language but intention. She understands." She turned to Celeste, switching back to French. "I hope Mr. Beaumont knows what he has found." As the delegation prepared to leave, Madame Rousseau pulled Celeste aside. "Michel Fontaine is hosting a symposium next month in Paris. I'll be speaking. You should attend. I'll ensure you receive an invitation." Celeste could only nod, overwhelmed. As the elevator doors closed on the French delegation, the conference room erupted. Associates high-fived, Patricia actually smiled, and Alexander was looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. Everyone else saw the success, the saved deal, the crisis averted. But he was looking at her like she was a miracle he didn't quite believe in yet. "Sir," Patricia said, "I'll arrange proper compensation for Miss Moreau." "Clear the room," Alexander said quietly. "But sir," "Everyone out. Now." The room emptied in seconds, leaving Celeste and Alexander alone with the afternoon sun streaming through the windows and the ghost of what had just happened hanging between them. "How?" he asked simply. Celeste sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her aware that she was sitting in a borrowed uniform in a conference room she'd never thought she'd enter as anything but cleaning staff. "I told you. I studied." "No." He moved closer, sitting in the chair beside her rather than across the table. This close, she could see flecks of blue in his gray eyes. "How did you know exactly what to say? You weren't just translating. You were orchestrating." "I understood what mattered to her," Celeste said honestly. "And I understood what mattered to you. Sometimes translation isn't about finding exact words, but about finding common ground. You saved my company today. You saved it. I just helped with the words." He laughed, a surprised sound that transformed his face. "Just help with the words? Celeste, you did more in 2 hours than teams of consultants have managed in 3 years." Her name on his lips did something to her heart rate. "I was just..." "Stop," He leaned forward, intense now. Stop diminishing what you just did. I've built this company by recognizing talent, and what you have, it's rare. Extraordinary. The word hung between them. The same word Madame Rousseau had used. But from him, it felt different. Weighted. Personal. I should go, Celeste said, standing abruptly. My mother, I'm filling in for her today. I need to finish her shift. You're going back to cleaning? He sounded incredulous. It's honest work, she said defensively. I didn't mean. He stopped, running a hand through his hair. I'm sorry. That came out wrong. You have a master's degree. You speak 5 languages. You just facilitated one of the biggest deals in my company's history. And you're going back to emptying wastebaskets. Welcome to my world, Mr. Beaumont. The words came out more bitter than she intended. Where degrees and languages and capability mean nothing if you don't have the right connections, the right name, the right background. Understanding dawned in his eyes. How many jobs have you applied for? 43 in the last 6 months. And 43 rejections. Cultural fit, they say. Or overqualified. Or underqualified. There's always a reason that basically means the same thing. I'm not the right kind of person for their world. Alexander stood, moving to the window. The city sprawled before them, all glass and possibility for some. My father stole everything when I was 22, he said suddenly. Left me with nothing but debt and a sick mother. I know what it's like to be on the outside looking in, to have every door slammed in your face. Celeste joined him at the window, maintaining careful distance. But you made it through. By becoming ruthless. By trusting no one. By building walls so high that. He trailed off. That what? That I forgot what it felt like to have someone simply help because it was right. Without agenda, without expectation of reward. You stepped forward today when you could have stayed hidden. Why? Celeste thought about it, watching the city below where invisible people kept everything running. Because I heard something in your voice. Not just fear of losing a deal, but something deeper. Like this was about more than money. It was, he admitted. This deal was supposed to be my last big move before I figured out why I still feel empty despite having everything. The confession hung between them, too honest for strangers, too real for the polished conference room. Celeste understood that emptiness. She felt it every time another door closed, every time her brilliance went unrecognized. I should really go, she said softly. The 41st floor won't clean itself. Work for me. The words came out rushed, desperate almost. Celeste turned to stare at him. What? Work for me. Officially. International Relations Director, or Senior Translator, or whatever title you want. Name your salary. You don't even know me. I know enough. I know you're brilliant. I know you understand nuance and strategy. I know you saved my company today. And I know you're offering me a job out of gratitude, which you'll regret tomorrow when the adrenaline wears off. This isn't gratitude. Isn't it? Celeste challenged. An hour ago, I was invisible to you. To everyone here. Now suddenly I'm worth a senior position? What happens next week when you remember I'm still just the cleaning lady's daughter? The words hit him like a slap. She saw it, saw him flinch, and then steel himself. You're right, he said quietly. I don't know you, but I want to. And not because of gratitude or the deal or any of that. Because when you walked into that chaos and offered to help, when you took control of that room, I saw someone I recognized. Someone who's fought for every inch of ground they've gained. Someone who refuses to let the world define their limits. Pretty words, Mr. Beaumont. Alexander, he corrected. And they're not just words. Give me a chance to prove it. Celeste looked at him. Really looked. Saw the cracks in his armor. The loneliness that success hadn't filled. The genuine desire to connect. But she also saw her mother's bent back. Her own reflection in bathroom mirrors after another rejection. The weight of hope disappointed too many times. I need to think, she said finally. That's fair. But Celeste. He pulled out a business card, writing something on the back. This is my direct line. Not the company line, not Patricia. Me. When you're ready to talk, call. She took the card, their fingers brushing in the exchange. Electric. Dangerous. Your mother, he said suddenly. She's sick. The flu. She'll be fine. Take the rest of the day. Her shift, I mean. I'll make sure she's paid. She won't lose anything. I couldn't. Please. The word seemed unfamiliar on his tongue. Let me do this one small thing. Celeste nodded, not trusting her voice. She moved toward the door, then paused. Alexander. He looked up, hope naked on his face at her use of his name. The empty feeling? Maybe it's not about the next big deal. Maybe it's about letting someone see you. Really see you. She left before he could respond, before the moment could become something neither was ready for. But as she collected the abandoned cleaning cart, as she made her way to the service elevator, she could feel the card burning in her pocket like a promise. Back in the conference room, Alexander stood at the window watching the city transform in the afternoon light. For 13 years, he'd built walls to protect himself, created a fortress of success that no one could breach. In 2 hours, a cleaning lady's daughter with a master's degree in perfect French had walked through those walls like they were made of paper. He thought about her voice, calm and clear, building bridges between languages and cultures. He thought about her eyes, fierce with intelligence and wounded by rejection. He thought about the moment she'd taken control, how natural it had felt to trust her with everything. His phone rang, shareholders calling to congratulate him on the French deal. He let it go to voicemail. For the first time in years, the victory felt hollow because the person who'd made it possible had walked away. But she'd taken his card, and she'd called him Alexander. It was a start. Have you ever had a moment where you had to choose between staying safe and invisible or stepping forward into uncertainty? What did you choose and what happened? Share your story in the comments below. Celeste didn't call. For 3 days, Alexander's private phone remained silent while the business world celebrated Beaumont Industries' French triumph. The Wall Street Journal ran a feature. Forbes called it the deal of the decade. His board approved bonuses, his competitors seethed, and Patricia fielded congratulations from around the globe. None of it mattered. He found himself checking his phone during meetings, glancing at the executive floor's service entrances, even walking past the 22nd floor break room at odd hours. The cleaning lady's daughter who spoke perfect French had vanished as suddenly as she'd appeared, leaving only the echo of possibility. Sir, Patricia's voice cut through his distraction. The Tokyo team is waiting for your input on the quarterly projections. Tell them to proceed without me. Patricia's pause spoke volumes. Alexander never missed strategy calls. Sir, are you feeling all right? I'm fine. The lie came automatically. He wasn't fine. He was rattled, unsettled in a way that had nothing to do with business, and everything to do with gray eyes that saw too much. Meanwhile, 20 floors below, Celeste sat in the familiar break room staring at his business card. She'd memorized the number, traced his handwriting with her finger, carried it like a talisman and a curse. You're going to wear a hole in that card, her mother observed, setting down tea. Marie had recovered from the flu, but noticed her daughter's distraction. The CEO's personal number, you said? It doesn't matter, doesn't it? You saved his company, ma chérie. Surely that earns you a conversation. Celeste laughed bitterly. One afternoon doesn't erase a lifetime, maman. He was grateful, emotional. By now he's remembered who I really am. And who are you really? Nobody. The help. Someone who cleans up after people like him. Marie's eyes flashed. Is that what you think of me? Of what I do? No, maman, I didn't mean. You did mean it. And that's the problem. Marie sat across from her daughter, weathered hands folded. You think because I clean, I'm less than. You think because you're my daughter, you're condemned to be invisible. But ma petite étoile, invisibility is not inheritance. It's choice. It's not that simple, isn't it? A powerful man offered you opportunity, and you're hiding here because you're afraid. I'm being realistic. You're being a coward. The words stung because they were true. Celeste had faced down French executives, navigated complex negotiations, saved a multi-million-dollar deal. But the thought of calling Alexander, of stepping into his world permanently, terrified her more than any boardroom. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hello, Miss Moreau? This is Sylvie Rousseau. Celeste's heart stopped. Madame Rousseau? I've been thinking about you since Monday. That invitation to Paris wasn't empty courtesy. I want you at the symposium, but more than that, I have a proposition. Rousseau Industries needs someone with your skills. Would you consider? She's considering another offer. A familiar voice interrupted. Celeste spun to find Alexander in the break room doorway, phone pressed to his ear. He ended his call as Madame Rousseau's confused voice continued from Celeste's phone. That was incredibly rude, Celeste managed. Yes, he agreed, stepping into the room. It was. But I'm not losing you to Paris before we've even had a conversation. Losing me? You don't have me. No, he said quietly. I don't. But I'd like to change that. Marie discreetly excused herself, but not before giving Alexander a long, measuring look. How did you even know I was here? Security mentioned you'd been coming in with your mother. I've been. He paused, vulnerability flickering across his features. I've been hoping to run into you. Why? Because you didn't call. Because for 3 days I've been wondering if I imagined what happened in that conference room. Because every meeting since then has felt flat, every success hollow, and I can't stop thinking about what you said, about letting someone really see me. The raw honesty in his voice undid her. This wasn't the polished CEO. This was the man who'd panicked at losing everything, who'd trusted a stranger with his future. I was going to call Madame Rousseau back, she said weakly. Don't. He moved closer, and she caught that scent again, expensive cologne and something uniquely him. Not yet. Give me 1 week. To do what? To show you that Beaumont Industries can be more than a building where your mother works nights. To prove that what happened Monday wasn't adrenaline or gratitude but recognition. To convince you that you belong here. Not because I'm offering charity, but because you're exactly what this company needs. And what's that? Someone real. Someone who sees past the surface. Someone who understands that the best deals aren't just about numbers, but about connection. Celeste's phone rang again, Madame Rousseau calling back. Alexander's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. She declined the call. 1 week, she agreed. But I'm not your employee yet. I don't owe you anything. No, he said, a smile ghosting across his lips. You don't, which is why this might actually work. He turned to leave, then paused. There's a department meeting tomorrow at 9. International Division. Be there. I don't have a badge for the executive floors. You do now. Patricia will have it waiting. He met her eyes. Unless you're too scared to use it. It was a challenge, deliberately thrown. The same tone she'd heard in the conference room when he'd asked if she could handle the French delegation. I'm not scared of your world, Mr. Beaumont. Alexander, he corrected. And I'm counting on that. After he left, Celeste sat in the quiet break room, her tea growing cold. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from Madame Rousseau. The smart play was to call her back, accept whatever offer Paris held, stay safe in familiar shadows. Instead, she thought about Alexander's eyes when he'd said he'd been hoping to run into her. She thought about the way he'd looked at her in the conference room. Not like the cleaning lady's daughter, but like someone essential. 1 week, she whispered to the empty room. Upstairs, Alexander stood at his window, heart racing like he'd just closed a $1 billion deal. He'd found her. He'd challenged her. She'd agreed to try. Sir, Patricia appeared. About Miss Moreau's badge. Full access. And Patricia? Set up a workspace in the International Division. Something with a window. She hasn't accepted a position yet. She will. How can you be sure? Alexander thought about the fire in her eyes when he'd challenged her, the way she'd declined Rousseau's call. Because she's like me. She can't walk away from something unfinished. And what exactly is unfinished, sir? He didn't answer, but they both knew it wasn't just about business. Something had started in that conference room. Something that threatened everything he'd built to protect himself. Trust no one but yourself. His father's words, worn smooth by years of repetition. But maybe, just maybe, it was time for new words. That night, Celeste stood before her closet, surveying clothes that suddenly seemed inadequate. Everything she owned spoke of libraries and lecture halls, not boardrooms and executive meetings. Wear the blue dress, her mother suggested from the doorway. The one you got for your thesis defense. It's not designer. No, but it's yours. You chose it, you earned it. You wore it when you proved your worth to those professors. Marie smoothed the fabric. Don't try to be what you think they expect. Be who you are. What if who I am isn't enough? Then they don't deserve you. But ma chérie, I don't think that's what this is about. You're not afraid of not being enough. You're afraid of being everything. Celeste met her mother's knowing gaze. He looks at me like you matter? Like I'm the answer to a question he didn't know he was asking. Marie smiled. Perhaps you are. Perhaps he's your answer too. I don't need saving, Maman. No, you don't. But maybe you need seeing. Really seeing. The way he saw you in that conference room. As Celeste laid out her clothes for tomorrow, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Asterisk. Thank you for giving me a week. I won't waste it. Asterisk. She stared at the message, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Finally, she typed back. Asterisk, I'm not easily convinced. Asterisk. His response came immediately. Asterisk, I noticed. It's one of your best qualities. Asterisk. Despite everything, she smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Alexander's world was still foreign territory, full of unwritten rules and invisible barriers. His colleagues would question her presence, his board would demand explanations, and she would have to prove herself all over again. But tonight, for the first time in months, Celeste fell asleep feeling like possibility had returned to her vocabulary. The resistance hadn't ended. If anything, it was just beginning. They would both fight this pull between them. Both question whether connection across such different worlds could survive reality. But the spark from the conference room refused to die, and sometimes that's all possibility needs. 1 week. 7 days to bridge 2 worlds. The countdown had begun. The international division occupied the 40th floor. Close enough to executive power to matter, far enough to breed ambition. Celeste arrived at 8:45 a.m., wearing her blue dress and armor made of determination. The receptionist looked confused. I'm sorry, are you here for an interview? No, I'm here for the 9 o'clock meeting. I don't have you on the... She stopped, eyes widening at something on her screen. Miss Morrow, you have full executive access. The badge worked smoothly, opening doors that had been closed to her for years. But electronic access was easier than human acceptance. The conference room buzzed with preemptive judgment. She recognized the looks. Who is she? Why is she here? What game is Alexander playing? Only one person smiled. James Chun, a young analyst who'd probably faced his own share of those looks. You're the translator from the French deal, he said quietly. That was incredible work. Before she could respond, Alexander entered. The room's energy shifted instantly, everyone straightening like flowers toward sun. He commanded space effortlessly, but Celeste noticed what others missed. The quick scan for her, the slight relaxation when their eyes met. Good morning, everyone. As you've heard, we closed the Rousseau deal successfully. What you may not know is that we almost lost it entirely, and we owe our success to someone who stepped forward when we needed help most. He gestured to Celeste. Celeste Moreau will be working with us this week as we implement the French partnership. I expect you to show her every courtesy and resource. In what capacity? Asked Director Harrison, a silver-haired man who managed to make the question sound like an accusation. In whatever capacity gets results, Alexander replied coolly. Miss Moreau speaks 5 languages and has a master's in international business relations. More importantly, she understands nuance, something this division could use more of. The meeting proceeded with updates on various international projects. Celeste took notes, observing dynamics, identifying weaknesses in their approach. When discussion turned to a stalled negotiation with a Brazilian firm, she couldn't stay silent. You're approaching them like Americans, she said. The room turned to stare. Harrison's voice dripped condescension. And how should we approach them? Like people who understand that in Brazil, business is personal. You're leading with numbers, when you should be leading with relationship. Have you invited their team here? Shown them your commitment beyond spreadsheets. That's a significant expense. Less significant than losing the deal, Alexander interjected. Celeste, work with James to develop a proposal. I want to see a relationship-focused strategy by end of day. After the meeting dispersed, Harrison lingered. A word, Alexander? Celeste started to leave, but Alexander's voice stopped her. Stay. This concerns you. Harrison's face reddened. I've been with this company 12 years. And in those 12 years, how many South American partnerships have you successfully closed? Silence. Celeste identified our problem in minutes. That's why she's here. If you have an issue with that, we can discuss your future with the company. After Harrison stormed out, Celeste found herself alone with Alexander for the first time since the break room. You didn't have to threaten him for me. I wasn't defending you. I was defending good business. But his eyes said otherwise. Your office is ready. 3rd door on the left. I don't need an office for a week. Take the office, Celeste. Please. The space was perfect. Corner windows, fresh flowers, technology she'd only dreamed of using. It felt like a trap made of kindness. James knocked, entering with coffee and genuine enthusiasm. I've pulled our Brazil files. Fair warning, they're a mess. They work through lunch, Celeste teaching James about Brazilian business culture while he navigated internal politics for her. She learned that Alexander had promoted from within, valued innovation over pedigree, but still fought board members who preferred traditional approaches. He's different since Monday, James mentioned casually. Usually he's all business. But this week he actually smiled. Patricia nearly fainted. At 3 p.m., Alexander appeared. How's the proposal coming? See for yourself. Celeste handed him their draft, proud of what they'd built. He read intently, occasionally nodding. This is excellent. Present it to the board tomorrow. The board. Her voice cracked slightly. Problem. I've been here one day, and you've already identified solutions to problems we've had for months. Unless you're not ready. There it was again, the challenge. He knew exactly which buttons to push. I'll be ready. Good. Dinner. The invitation hung between them, personal disguised as professional. I should prepare. You need to eat. We both do. Consider it a working dinner. I'll brief you on board dynamics. She should say no. Every instinct screamed danger. But curiosity won. 1 hour. His smile transformed his face. I'll take it. The restaurant he chose was quiet, elegant without being ostentatious. Over excellent wine, he dissected board personalities with surgical precision, preparing her for tomorrow's gauntlet. But between strategies, she glimpsed the man beneath. Humor, passion for innovation, deep loneliness he probably didn't realize showed. Why did you really hire Harrison? She asked. He's competent, but hardly innovative. Alexander paused, wine glass halfway to his lips. His daughter has special needs. The company insurance covers her treatments. He's been coasting on that safety net for years. So you keep him out of kindness? I keep him because I remember what it's like to need help. But kindness without accountability helps no one. He'll either rise to meet your challenge or make room for someone who will. Like me. Especially like you. His gaze was too intense, too personal. You see things others miss. You bridge gaps others don't even notice exist. Is that why I'm really here? To be your bridge. You're here because you're brilliant. Everything else. He trailed off. Everything else? Is complicated. The admission hung between them. Under the table, her knee accidentally brushed his. Neither moved away. I should go, she said finally. Big day tomorrow. I'll drive you. I can take the subway. I know you can. Let me anyway. The ride was quiet, charged with unspoken possibilities. When they reached her building, modest but clean, a world away from his penthouse, he looked like he wanted to say something more. Thank you, she said quickly. For dinner. For the opportunity. For seeing me. Even when I was trying to stay invisible. His hand covered hers on the door handle. You were never invisible to me. Even that first night, in the break room. You shone too bright to miss. She fled before he could say more. Before the moment could become something neither was ready to name. But she felt his eyes follow her into the building. Felt the warmth of his touch long after she'd closed her apartment door. Inside, she found her mother waiting with tea and knowing eyes. How was your first day in his world? Terrifying. Exhilarating. Confusing. Celeste accepted the tea gratefully. He's not what I expected. The good ones never are. It's been one day, man. Don't start planning weddings. I'm not planning anything. I'm just observing that you look alive in a way you haven't in months. It was true. Despite the challenges, despite Harrison's hostility and her own fears, she felt energized. Useful. Seen. Her phone buzzed. Asterisk, you left your notebook in my car. I'll bring it tomorrow. Sleep well. You're going to be brilliant. Asterisk. She hadn't left any notebook. They both knew it. Asterisk, thank you. For everything. Asterisk. Asterisk, this is just the beginning. Asterisk. As she prepared for bed, Celeste thought about proximity. How it could be forced by circumstance but chosen by hearts. Tomorrow she'd face the board, prove herself again, fight for her place in Alexander's world. But tonight, she allowed herself to imagine that she'd already found it. Not in the office or the title, but in the space between their words at dinner, in the warmth of his hand over hers, in the way he saw her brilliance before she fully believed in it herself. 1 day down. 6 to go. But already, she knew a week wouldn't be enough. The question was, enough for what? For the job. Or for whatever was building between them. Unnamed but undeniable. In the forced proximity of two souls recognizing each other across every boundary that should keep them apart? The board presentation was scheduled for 2 p.m. By 1:45, Celeste had checked her notes 17 times, adjusted her blazer twice, and wondered if accepting Madame Rousseau's offer would have been simpler. "Stop fidgeting," James advised, appearing with coffee. "You've got this. Easy for you to say. You belong here." "Do I?" He smiled wryly. First-generation Chinese-American, state school education, hired despite Harrison's objections. Sound familiar? Before she could respond, Alexander entered the prep room. He'd been in back-to-back meetings all morning, but his eyes found hers immediately. "Ready?" "No," she admitted. "Good. Overconfidence is dangerous. Truth and preparation are better." He straightened her blazer collar, an intimate gesture that made James suddenly very interested in his phone. "Remember, you're not asking for their approval. You're showing them the future." The boardroom was intimidation incarnate. Dark wood oil paintings of former presidents, 12 faces ranging from skeptical to hostile. Celeste recognized the dynamic immediately. Old guard versus new vision, with Alexander the bridge between. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alexander began, "Celeste Moreau, who saved our French partnership and has identified significant opportunities in our South American strategy." "The cleaning lady's daughter," someone whispered, not quite quietly enough. Celeste's spine straightened. "Yes," she said clearly. "I am Marie Moreau's daughter. She's worked in this building for 15 years with more dignity and dedication than most people bring to corner offices. I'm proud to be her daughter." The room went silent. Alexander's eyes held something that looked like pride. "But you're not here to discuss my mother," she continued, clicking to her first slide. "You're here to discuss why Beaumont Industries is leaving money on the table in South America." For the next 30 minutes, she dissected their failures with surgical precision, then rebuilt their strategy from the ground up. She spoke about relationship capital, cultural intelligence, the cost of American arrogance in global markets. When board members challenged her, she responded with data, examples, and quiet confidence that grew with each exchange. "This approach would require significant investment," argued Crawford, the CFO. "Less than we've already lost through failed negotiations," Celeste countered. "Would you like to see the numbers?" She pulled up spreadsheets James had helped prepare, walking them through cost-benefit analyses that made Crawford's objections evaporate. By the time she finished, even Harrison looked grudgingly impressed. "Questions?" she asked. Eleanor Beaumont, Alexander's elderly board chair, and no relation despite the name, leaned forward. "Just one. Why are you really here, Miss Moreau?" The question cut deeper than financial projections. Celeste felt Alexander tense beside her. "Because I believe in what Beaumont Industries could be," she answered honestly. "A company that values insight over insider status, that builds bridges instead of walls. Whether I'm here for a week or longer, I want to help build that future." Eleanor studied her for a long moment, then smiled. "Well, Alexander, it seems you've found someone who understands vision. The board approves the Brazil initiative." As members filed out, offering handshakes and measured approval, Eleanor lingered. "Walk with me, Miss Moreau." Celeste glanced at Alexander, who nodded encouragingly. Eleanor led her to a private elevator, pressing the button for the executive floor. "I knew your mother once," Eleanor said conversationally. "Years ago, when she first started here. Did she ever mention the Christmas party incident?" "No, ma'am. A board member, long gone now, had too much to drink. Made unwelcome advances toward a young secretary. Your mother intervened, quite forcefully. Threw a punch that would have made a boxer proud." Celeste's mouth fell open. Her gentle mother had punched a board member? She thought she'd be fired, of course. "Instead, I promoted the secretary and terminated the board member. Your mother earned my respect that night. She saw wrongdoing and acted, regardless of consequence." The elevator opened to a private office overlooking the city. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because courage runs in families, and Alexander needs someone courageous beside him." Eleanor poured 2 glasses of sherry. "He's built impressive walls since his father's betrayal. I've watched him succeed at everything except the one thing that matters, letting someone in. Mrs. Beaumont." "Eleanor, please. And I'm not matchmaking, dear. I'm simply observing that in 3 days, you've made him smile more than he has in 3 years. It's just professional." "Is it?" Eleanor's eyes were knowing. "I've run companies longer than you've been alive. I know the difference between professional respect and personal recognition. What I saw in that boardroom, and how he watched you succeed, how you trusted him to support you. That's not business. A knock interrupted. Alexander entered, looking between them with concern. Eleanor, if you're terrorizing Celeste, I'm sharing family history. Did you know her mother once defended my secretary's honor with her fists? Alexander's eyes widened, turning to Celeste with new respect. Really? Apparently. Though she never mentioned it. The best heroes never do, Eleanor said meaningfully. Now, I believe you two have work to discuss. Use my office. I have a spa appointment. After she left, Celeste sank into a chair, overwhelmed. Your board chair is terrifying, wonderful, inappropriately matchmaking. All of the above. Alexander poured himself water, his back to her. She's right, you know, about the smiling. The admission hung between them. Celeste watched his shoulders tense, waiting for walls to rebuild. Instead, he turned, vulnerability naked on his face. Can I show you something? He led her to his office, past Patricia's curious gaze, to a wall she'd assumed held more corporate art. Instead, he revealed a hidden panel containing personal items, photos, documents, memories. My father, he said, pointing to a photo of a younger Alexander with a man who shared his eyes but not his integrity. Thomas Beaumont. Brilliant businessman, terrible human being. Celeste studied the photo, seeing shadows of the man Alexander had become and fought not to be. He built the original Beaumont Industries. Smaller but profitable. I idolized him. Worked summers in the mailroom, learned the business from ground up. Then Mom got sick. Pancreatic cancer. His voice roughened. Celeste moved closer instinctively. Treatment was expensive. Dad said he'd handle it, told me to focus on finishing college. I trusted him completely. A bitter laugh. He liquidated everything. The company, our savings, even Mom's life insurance. Disappeared with his secretary and $3 million while I was sitting in an economics final. Alexander. Mom died 6 months later. Not because of money. I worked 3 jobs, sold everything, but the cancer was too advanced. But those last months, watching her realize the man she'd loved for 30 years had abandoned her when she needed him most. His fist clenched. Celeste covered it with her hand, feeling the tremor of old pain. That's why you built the walls. Trust no one but yourself, he quoted. His parting wisdom in a note that said he was teaching me a valuable lesson about business. But you didn't become him. Didn't I? I'm 35, married to this company, measuring worth in stock prices. You kept Harrison for his daughter. You gave me a chance when everyone else saw the cleaning lady's daughter. You're nothing like him. Have you ever had to overcome the shadow of someone else's betrayal? How did you learn to trust again? Share your story in the comments below, and let's support each other. He stared at their joined hands. When you walked into that conference room, when you saved everything with nothing but intelligence and courage, I thought maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe some people are worth trusting. Some people are. Are you? The question was loaded with more than professional implications. Celeste felt the weight of it, the risk of answering honestly. I don't know, she admitted. I've never had anyone trust me with anything that mattered. That's not true. I trusted you with my company. That was desperation. No. He turned her hand over, tracing her palm like it held answers. That was recognition. Of someone who fights like I fight, who builds despite the odds, who refuses to let circumstances define limits. Is that why you're really fighting for me to stay? Because I remind you of yourself? No. Because you remind me of who I could be. With someone beside me who sees past the walls. A knock shattered the moment. Patricia entered with apologies and urgencies. The Tokyo office needed him. The lawyers were waiting. The world demanded the CEO's attention. Alexander squeezed Celeste's hand before letting go. We're not done talking. No, she agreed. We're not. As she returned to her temporary office, Celeste felt the shape of truth settling around them. This wasn't just about jobs or opportunities. 2 damaged souls had recognized each other across every barrier society built between them. The question was whether recognition was enough to overcome the fear of trusting, the weight of history, the risk of hoping for more than either had allowed themselves to want. Her phone buzzed. Asterisk, dinner tonight? Not business. Just us. Asterisk. She thought of his father's betrayal, her mother's courage, Eleanor's knowing eyes. Thought of walls and bridges, and the space between protection and isolation. Yes. 1 word. 3 letters. Everything. Alexander chose a different restaurant this time. Small, intimate. hidden in a neighborhood Celeste knew well. The kind of place that served comfort over cuisine, where families celebrated birthdays and couples held hands over checkered tablecloths. "You look surprised," he said as they were seated. "I expected something more. Pretentious? Expensive? Designed to impress. Your usual style." He smiled, genuinely amused. "My usual style is a takeout container at my desk at 11 p.m. This is..." He paused, vulnerable again. "This is where I used to bring my mother before, when success meant getting A's and making her proud." The elderly waitress recognized him, fussing over how thin he'd gotten, how long it had been. She spoke to him in Greek, and he responded fluently, making her laugh. "Another language?" Celeste asked when they were alone. "My mother's family. I spent summers in Athens as a kid." His eyes went distant. "Haven't spoken it much since she died. Tell me about her." Not the illness, her. For the first time since she'd met him, Alexander truly relaxed. Over simple food and house wine, he painted a picture of Maria Beaumont. Teacher, dreamer, woman who believed in the power of education and kindness. "She would have liked you," he said suddenly. "Someone who fought for knowledge, who didn't let circumstances limit dreams." "She sounds wonderful." She was. And disappointing her was my biggest fear. When Dad left, when everything fell apart, all I could think was how I'd failed to protect her. "You were 22. A child, really." "I didn't feel like a child. I felt like I'd aged decades overnight." He refilled their wine glasses. "Your turn. Tell me about growing up as Marie's daughter." So she did. Stories of homework in hospital waiting rooms, while her mother's second job cleaning medical offices paid for school supplies. Of Christmas mornings made magical despite empty bank accounts. Of a woman who spoke 3 languages but was seen as just a cleaner. "She taught me that dignity isn't about what you do but how you do it," Celeste said. "That invisible doesn't mean unimportant." She's right, though I prefer you visible. The words hung between them, heavier than intended. Celeste felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I mean professionally," he added quickly, then laughed. "No, that's a lie. I mean entirely. Alexander. I know. Too much, too fast. I haven't talked to anyone like this in years. Really talked. It's dangerous how easy you make it." "Why dangerous?" "Because I'm starting to need it. To need you." The admission should have sent her running. Instead, she reached across the table, taking his hand. "Maybe that's not dangerous. Maybe that's human." They stayed until the restaurant closed, the waitress shooing them out with knowing smiles and a to-go box of baklava for later. Walking to his car, Celeste shivered in the evening chill. Without hesitation, Alexander draped his jacket around her shoulders. "I can't keep this," she protested even as she pulled it closer, breathing in his scent. "It's a loan. You can return it tomorrow." "And if I don't come tomorrow?" He stopped walking, turning to face her under a streetlight. "Then I'll know I pushed too hard, revealed too much." "But you'll come." "How do you know?" "Because you're curious. Because there's more to discuss about Brazil. Because..." He cupped her face gently. "Because this matters. Whatever this is becoming between us, it matters." She should step back. Should remind him, and herself, that she was just temporary, that worlds like theirs didn't merge, that every fairy tale had midnight waiting. Instead, she rose on her toes and kissed him. It was soft, tentative, a question more than a statement. He froze for a heartbeat, then responded with careful tenderness, as if she might disappear if he held too tight. When they parted, both were breathing unsteadily. "Celeste, don't analyze it," she whispered. "Don't build it into more or less than what it is. Just let it be." He drove her home in silence that felt full rather than empty. At her building, he caught her hand before she could flee. "The jacket really is just a loan," he said seriously. "But this," he gestured between them, "this I'd like to be more permanent." "Ask me again in 3 days," she managed. "I'll ask you again in 30 years if you'll let me." She took the stairs 2 at a time, heart racing, his jacket wrapped around her like an embrace. In her apartment, she found her mother reading, a cup of tea growing cold. "You look happy," Marie observed. "I'm terrified. The best things in life are terrifying, ma chérie. Safe is for people who've given up on extraordinary." The next morning, Celeste arrived early, determined to focus on work despite the jacket hanging in her office. She'd return it, really, just not yet. But the universe had other plans. "Emergency," James announced, bursting in. The Brazilian delegation moved up their visit. They'll be here tomorrow. Tomorrow? But the proposal is brilliant but needs refining. Alexander wants all hands on deck. He's cleared his schedule to work with us personally, which was how Celeste found herself in the small conference room with Alexander, James, and 2 other analysts, sleeves rolled up, surrounded by charts and coffee cups. This was different from their dinner. This was Alexander in his element, brilliant and demanding but never cruel. The relationship component is strong, he said, studying their latest draft. But we need more concrete timelines. Celeste's thoughts. She'd been watching him work, seeing new facets. How he encouraged junior staff. How he built on ideas rather than tearing them down. How his passion for innovation made everyone want to be better. We're still thinking like Americans wearing Brazilian costumes, she said. We need Brazilian partners from the start, not after contracts are signed. Budget nightmare, one analyst muttered. Short-term cost, long-term investment, Alexander countered. Celeste's right. James, can you identify potential partners by morning? They worked through lunch, energy building rather than flagging. When someone suggested ordering in, Alexander surprised everyone by cooking, commandeering the executive kitchen to make omelets with the focus he brought to billion-dollar deals. Hidden talents, Celeste teased, accepting a perfectly folded creation. My mother insisted. Said no son of hers would survive on cereal. His smile faltered slightly. Haven't done this since she died. He nodded. The other team members had drifted to their computers, leaving them momentarily alone. Thank you, she said softly, for sharing that with us. With me. You make me remember things I thought I'd forgotten how to do. By evening, they had a proposal that sang with possibility. The team dispersed, exhausted but exhilarated. Celeste started to follow, but Alexander caught her hand. Stay. Just for a bit. They sat in the conference room as the building quieted around them, city lights painting patterns on the walls. I used to love this time of day, he said, when the pressure eased and I could just think. Used to. Lately, quiet meant being alone with questions I couldn't answer. Until this week. What changed? You know what changed? He pulled her closer, and she let him, fitting against his side like she belonged there. In 5 days, you've made me remember why I built this company. Not for power or proof, but to create something meaningful. You did that before I arrived. No, I created something successful. There's a difference. Sometimes the right person doesn't complete you. They remind you of who you were meant to be. If you found that person, tell them. If you're still searching, don't give up. Love often arrives in the most unexpected packages. Share your thoughts below. They talked as the hours passed, about dreams beyond business, places they wanted to travel, books that changed them. She learned he played piano, but hadn't touched one since his mother's funeral. He discovered she wrote poetry in French when insomnia struck. Read me something, he requested. They're not very good. I don't care about good. I care about yours. So she recited from memory verses about bridges and walls, about visibility and value, about hearts that recognized each other across impossible distances. When she finished, his eyes were bright with emotion. That's about us. It's about possibility. Same thing. At midnight, security made their rounds, reminding them the building was closing. In the elevator, Alexander pressed the button for the parking garage, then changed his mind, hitting the stop button between floors. What are you? He kissed her, deeper than last night, with intention rather than question. When they parted, both were shaking. I'm falling for you, he said simply. Fast and completely and against every rule I've made for myself. I need you to know that before tomorrow, before Brazil, before any of it becomes about business again. Alexander, you don't have to say anything. Just know. Whatever happens, know that you've changed everything. He restarted the elevator, drove her home in charged silence. At her building, she finally found words. I'm falling too. It terrifies me more than any boardroom or presentation. But I'm falling too. His smile could have powered the city. Good. We can be terrified together. Inside, Celeste hung his jacket carefully, knowing she'd return it tomorrow, knowing everything was moving too fast, knowing none of that mattered when hearts recognized home in another's eyes. Her phone buzzed. Thank you for tonight. For this week. For stepping out of the shadows. Dream well. She typed back. Thank you for seeing me in them. Tomorrow we conquer Brazil. Tomorrow we conquer the world. Together. Together. Such a dangerous, beautiful word. The Brazilian delegation arrived at 10 a.m. sharp. Celeste wore her best suit, still not designer, but pressed with hope and purpose. Alexander had texted at dawn. Today we show them what partnership really means. Proud to have you beside me. The meeting was flawless. Celeste's cultural insights guided every interaction, her translations capturing nuance that turned skepticism into enthusiasm. The Brazilians loved the partnership approach, praised the innovation, and by lunch were discussing implementation timelines rather than possibilities. Señorita Moreau, the lead delegate said during a break, your understanding of our culture is remarkable. You've spent time in Brazil. Only in books and dreams, she admitted. But I believe understanding people starts with respecting who they are, not who we want them to be. Beaumont is lucky to have you. This proposal, it sings with authenticity. Alexander caught her eye across the room, pride and something deeper shining in his gaze. They were a team, seamless and strong. Then Richard Blackwood arrived. Celeste recognized him from business journals. Beaumont Industries' largest shareholder. The man who'd backed Alexander when banks wouldn't, who held 30% of the company and wielded it like a weapon. Alexander. Blackwood's voice cut through the positive atmosphere. A word. Now. The tone brooked no argument. Alexander's jaw tightened, but he excused himself politely. Through the glass wall, Celeste watched them argue. Blackwood gesturing sharply, Alexander defending, both men radiating tension. Politics, James muttered beside her. Blackwood hates anything that threatens the old ways. 20 minutes later, Alexander returned, but something had changed. His smile was forced, his attention scattered. When Celeste caught his hand under the table, a gesture that had become natural, he pulled away. The meeting concluded with handshakes and promises. The Brazilians departed delighted. Success should have tasted sweet. Instead, Alexander said coldly, Conference Room A. Senior staff only. Celeste started to follow. Harrison blocked her path. He said senior staff. But you what? You've been here a week. Know your place. Through the glass, she saw Blackwood holding court, other board members nodding along. Alexander stood rigid, taking whatever assault they were delivering. Patricia emerged, won't meet Celeste's eyes. He wants to see you, she said quietly. Alone. The walk felt like approaching execution. In the conference room, Alexander stood with his back to her, shoulders carved from stone. Congratulations, he said without turning. The Brazil strategy worked perfectly. Alexander, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. You did what I hired you to do. His voice was different. The CEO voice, not the man who'd cooked her omelets. Patricia will process appropriate compensation. Compensation? Alexander, talk to me. What did Blackwood? Mr. Beaumont. He turned finally, and his eyes were winter. In this building, it's Mr. Beaumont. The words slapped harder than any hand could. Celeste stepped back, disbelieving. Last night was a mistake. I let gratitude cloud judgment. Each word precise, cruel. You've served your purpose admirably, but let's not pretend this was ever more than a temporary arrangement. You're lying. Her voice shook. Whatever Blackwood said. Blackwood reminded me of reality. Of what's appropriate. Of the difference between. He gestured dismissively. Between executive leadership and support staff. Support staff? Is that what I am? What else would you be? Yes, you have skills. Yes, you helped with 2 deals. But did you really think that earned you a permanent place here? That a few days of playing translator made you? Made me what? Tears burned her eyes. Made me worthy of you. Don't be dramatic. I'm grateful for your assistance, but... Stop saying grateful. The word exploded from her. Stop reducing everything to transactions and assistance and purpose served. What about last night? What about falling? What about together? Something cracked in his facade. For a heartbeat, she saw agony in his eyes. Then the walls slammed back, reinforced and brutal. Emotional moments during stressful negotiations. I apologize if I gave you the wrong impression. He pulled out his checkbook. His checkbook, like she was a problem money could solve. What's appropriate? 10,000. 20. For your trouble. The insult broke something inside her. She thought of his jacket still in her office, of poems recited in darkness, of recognition that had felt like coming home. You want to know what's appropriate? Her voice was steady now, frozen like his. Honesty. But you're too much of a coward for that. Careful, Miss Moreau. Or what? You'll throw me out. Ban me from the building like my humanity is contagious. She stepped closer, forcing him to see her. I know what this is. Blackwood threatened something. The IPO, your expansion, your reputation. And faced with choosing between your heart and your empire, you chose exactly like your father did. He went white. Don't. He abandoned your mother when things got hard. You're abandoning me. Different circumstances, same cowardice. Get out. His voice was ice. I'm going. But first, understand what you're losing. Not just me, yourself. The man who cooked omelets for his team, who trusted a stranger with everything, who remembered how to smile. You're killing him to keep Blackwood happy, and that's the real tragedy. She turned to leave, then paused. Your mother would be ashamed. Not of me, the cleaning lady's daughter who dared to reach above her station. But of you, choosing walls over bridges, choosing fear over love. The last word hung between them like an accusation. She'd never said love before. Now it felt like a goodbye. Celeste. No. She held up a hand without turning. You made your choice. Live with it. She walked out with her head high, past Patricia's sympathetic gaze, past Harrison's satisfied smirk, past the offices that had felt like possibility and now felt like betrayal. In her temporary office, she found James packing her things, eyes red. I'm sorry, he whispered. Blackwood plays dirty. Threatened to pull funding, tank the IPO, destroy everything if Alexander didn't. Didn't what? Distance himself from what Blackwood called inappropriate associations. He meant you. So she'd been right. Faced with losing everything, Alexander had chosen his empire. She couldn't even blame him. She just wished it didn't hurt so much. Keep fighting, she told James. This company needs people like you. It needs people like you. No, it needs people it's willing to fight for. I'm not that. She left the building with a box of belongings that fit too easily in her arms. Thomas waited at security, his face grave. For what it's worth, he said quietly. You made this place better for a week. A week, she repeated. Yes, I suppose that's all it was. Outside, the city continued its relentless pace, indifferent to hearts breaking on 42nd floors. Celeste walked without direction, Alexander's words echoing with each step. Support staff. Temporary arrangement. Wrong impression. Her phone rang. Madame Rousseau. Celeste, I've been trying to reach you. The position in Paris. Yes, Celeste interrupted. Whatever it is, yes. You haven't heard the details. It doesn't matter. I need to leave New York. Ah, Madame Rousseau's voice gentled. The heart complicates things, non? Very well. Can you be in Paris by Monday? I can be there tomorrow. She ended the call and kept walking, past the restaurant where he'd cooked for her, past the streetlight where they'd kissed, past every landmark of a week that had rewritten her world only to burn it down. Her phone buzzed. Alexander. She deleted the message unread, then blocked his number. Some words couldn't be taken back. Some bridges, once burned, stayed ash. At home, she found her mother waiting with tea and wisdom she didn't want to hear. He panicked, Marie said simply. Men do when they're scared. He chose his company over me. He chose the familiar over the unknown. There's a difference. Not to me. Celeste accepted the tea with shaking hands. I'm taking the Paris job. Running away? Starting over. I won't be anyone's temporary arrangement again. Marie studied her daughter's face, seeing walls being built in real time. Ma chérie, not every story ends with the first chapter. This one does. Celeste's voice was final. I'll pack tonight. Can you ship the rest? If that's what you need. That night, Celeste sat in her room surrounded by suitcases and shattered dreams. On her bed lay Alexander's jacket. She'd grabbed it without thinking. One last piece of a fairy tale that had turned midnight too soon. Across the city, Alexander stood in his empty office, her words echoing in the silence. The Brazil contract sat on his desk, victory turned to ash. He'd saved his company and lost his soul. His phone showed 17 attempts to reach her, each blocked. He'd started to drive to her apartment twice, turned back both times. What could he say? That Blackwood had threatened to destroy everything? That he'd panicked? That choosing his empire over her had felt like cutting out his own heart? Trust no one but yourself. His father's words had saved him once. Now they felt like a prison sentence. Patricia knocked, entering with resignation letter. I've worked for you 5 years, she said quietly. I've never been ashamed until today. After she left, Alexander was truly alone. He'd won, kept Blackwood's support, protected the IPO, maintained control. So why did victory taste like the greatest loss of his life? His phone rang. "Eleanor." "I heard," she said without preamble. "You magnificent fool. I had no choice. There's always a choice. You just chose wrong." She sighed. "That girl was your chance at a real life, Alexander. Not just success, life. And you threw her away for what? Blackwood's approval. Blackwood owns 30%. And you own your heart. Or you did, until you gave it to her and then crushed it to keep shareholders happy." Eleanor's voice was sad. "She's leaving, you know. Paris. Tomorrow." The words hit like physical blows. Paris. Tomorrow. Gone. How do you? I have sources. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. I made my choice. Then you're not the man I thought you were. And certainly not the man she believed you could be. The line went dead. Alexander stood among the ruins of his victory, understanding finally what real loss felt like. Not money or deals or companies, but the absence of someone who'd seen past everything to find him worthy of love. And he'd proved her wrong. The airport departure lounge at 5 a.m. was a liminal space where goodbyes echoed and new beginnings whispered. Celeste sat with her boarding pass to Paris, watching planes lift into pre-dawn darkness, each one carrying someone toward or away from love. Her phone, now unblocked in a moment of weakness, showed nothing. No calls. No messages. No fight for her. Asterisk, ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin boarding flight 447 to Paris in 30 minutes. Asterisk. 30 minutes to close this chapter. 30 minutes to accept that some bridges couldn't be rebuilt. Her mother had driven her here in silence, offering presents instead of platitudes. At the security gate, Marie had simply held her tight and whispered, "Courage comes in many forms, ma chérie. Sometimes in leaving. Sometimes in staying." Now, alone with her choice, Celeste pulled out the letter she'd written at 3 a.m. "Alexander. Asterisk, by the time you read this, if you read this, I'll be gone. You were right about one thing. It was just a week. But you were wrong about everything else. Asterisk. Asterisk, I wasn't temporary. What we built wasn't gratitude. And what we could have been wasn't inappropriate. It was extraordinary. Asterisk. Asterisk, you chose your walls. I'm choosing my worth. Asterisk. Be well. See." She'd addressed it to his office, imagining Patricia placing it on his desk with the morning mail. He'd read it over coffee, perhaps feel a moment's regret, then move on to the next deal, the next success, the next empty victory. Her phone buzzed. Not Alexander, James. Asterisk, he's destroying himself. Hasn't left the office. Blackwood's circling like a vulture. The Brazil team pulled out. Said they want to work with you, not Beaumont. Please. He needs you. Asterisk. She typed back. Asterisk, he made his choice. Asterisk. Asterisk, he made a mistake. Haven't you ever made one? Asterisk. The question stung. Yes, she'd made mistakes. Believing in fairy tales. Thinking love could bridge worlds. Letting him see her heart only to watch him crush it for stock prices. Another text, this time from an unknown number. Asterisk, Celeste, this is Eleanor Beaumont. I'm in the private lounge, Terminal 2. We need to talk. 5 minutes. Please. Asterisk. Eleanor sat like a queen in exile, elegant even at dawn. She gestured to the seat beside her, ordering coffee without asking. You move fast, Eleanor observed. Though I suppose when someone breaks your heart, distance helps. Did you come to defend him? No. I came to tell you a story. Eleanor's eyes were kind but firm. 40 years ago, I fell in love with someone inappropriate. My father's mechanic. Italian, no education past high school, gorgeous hands that could fix anything except the distance between our worlds. Celeste's throat tightened. What happened? My father threatened to disown me. Cut me off from the family business, the only life I knew. So I chose safety. Married a suitable man, built a suitable life. Eleanor's smile was bitter. He died last year, my mechanic. I read about it in the paper. 50 years of marriage to a woman who wasn't me. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be smarter. The only real tragedy in life is loving someone and lacking the courage to fight for it. Eleanor pulled out an envelope. Alexander doesn't know I'm here. This isn't from him. It's from me. A job offer. My personal foundation needs someone who understands building bridges across cultures. The position's in New York. I've already accepted Paris. Paris will wait. The question is, What are you really running from? His cowardice or your own? The boarding announcement echoed through the lounge. 20 minutes now. He threw me away, Celeste said quietly. Like I was nothing. He panicked. Faced with losing everything he'd built, he reverted to old patterns. It was cruel and wrong and human. Eleanor stood. But here's what I know. He spent the night liquidating his personal assets. What? Selling his penthouse, his car collection, every investment outside the company. Building a war chest to buy out Blackwood. To choose you properly this time, without anyone's sword over his head. Celeste's heart stopped. Why didn't he tell me? Because you blocked him. Because he's proud and broken and trying to fix it before he comes to you. Because he thinks he needs to deserve you. Eleanor touched her shoulder gently. The fool doesn't understand you never needed his success. You needed his heart. 15 minutes until boarding, the speaker announced. Eleanor placed the envelope in Celeste's hands. Whatever you choose it fully. No half measures, no looking back. But remember, planes fly in both directions. Alone again, Celeste stared at her boarding pass. Paris promised safety, distance, a fresh start where CEOs didn't shatter her heart in conference rooms. But Eleanor's words echoed. What are you really running from? Her phone rang. Alexander's name appeared. He must have used a different phone. Against every instinct, she answered. Don't hang up. His voice was raw, exhausted. Please. I know I have no right to ask, but I'm at the airport. Silence. Then, barely audible. I know. How? Your mother. She called me at 4 a.m. Said if I let you leave without fighting, I didn't deserve the week we had. A broken laugh. She was right. About everything. Alexander. I've been up all night. Thinking about my father, about walls, about choosing emptiness over risk. You were right. I'm exactly like him. Choosing empire over love. Then why are you calling? Because I realized something. My father took everything that mattered. But the only thing I couldn't rebuild was trust. The ability to let someone in. His voice cracked. Then you walked into my conference room with your perfect French and your fierce eyes. And suddenly I remembered what it felt like to trust someone with everything. And then you threw me away. Yes. God, yes. Because I was terrified. Because Blackwood threatened to destroy it all, and I panicked. Because the last time I trusted someone completely, he left me with nothing. So you left me with nothing instead. I know. I'm sorry doesn't begin to cover it. But Celeste, the desperation in his voice broke her heart. I'm choosing differently now. I'm buying Blackwood out. It'll cost me everything personal I own, but I'll have controlling interest. No more swords over my head. No more choosing between my heart and my company. It's too late. Is it? You're still there. Still talking to me. That has to mean something. Asterisk, final boarding call for flight 447 to Paris. Asterisk. I have to go, she whispered. I'm in the parking garage. Level 3. I drove here hoping. I don't know what I was hoping. That I'd catch you. That I'd find words to fix this. That love was stronger than fear. His voice broke completely. I was wrong about everything except one thing. This wasn't just a week. This was the beginning of everything, and I destroyed it because I was too scared to believe in it. Alexander, choose Paris. You deserve Paris. Deserve better than a man who panicked at the first test. But know this, I'll wait. However long it takes, whatever I need to prove, I'll wait. Because you didn't just save my company, Celeste. You saved me. And I threw that away for nothing. The gate agent was calling her name now. Last chance. I wrote you a letter, she said softly. It's on your desk. What does it say? Goodbye. She hung up, turned off her phone, and walked toward the gate. Each step felt like crossing a universe. The agent scanned her boarding pass, smiled sympathetically at her tears. Paris is beautiful this time of year, she offered. Yes, Celeste agreed. Beautiful and far away. She made it 3 steps down the jetway. 3 steps towards safety and away from the man sitting in a parking garage, paying for his fears with everything except what mattered most. 3 steps before she understood Eleanor's real message. The only real tragedy is loving someone and lacking the courage to fight for it. But Eleanor had been talking about both of them. Celeste stopped so suddenly the passenger behind her stumbled. I'm sorry, she said to the startled gate agent. I can't get on this plane. Miss, we're about to close the door. Then close it. I'm choosing something else. She ran. Through the terminal, past security, wrong direction, ma'am. down escalators, following signs to parking. Her heels clicked against concrete like a countdown to possibility or disaster. Level 3 was nearly empty. She saw him before he saw her, slumped in his car, head in his hands, the powerful CEO reduced to a man who'd lost everything that mattered. She knocked on his window. The look on his face when he saw her, disbelief, hope, love so naked it hurt, made every doubt dissolve. "You stayed," he breathed, stumbling out of the car. "I chose. There's a difference." She held herself carefully, still protecting her heart. "But I need to know this isn't just panic about losing me. That tomorrow, when Blackwood's gone and the crisis passes, you won't." He kissed her, not soft or tentative, but with desperate certainty, pouring every apology, every promise, every truth into the connection. When they parted, both were crying. "I love you," he said simply. "Not for a week. Not for convenience. Not for what you can do for my company. I love you." Celeste Moreau, daughter of Marie, speaker of languages, builder of bridges, woman who sees through walls and demands better. "I love you, and I'll spend every day proving I'm worthy of that trust one broke. You hurt me. Yes, and I'll carry that forever. But if you give me another chance." "No." She placed a finger on his lips. "Not another chance. A first chance. Because what we had before was built on crisis and conference rooms. This, whatever this becomes, needs to be built on choice. Daily, conscious, brave choice. Starting now. Starting with breakfast. I'm starving, and airport coffee is terrible." He laughed, the sound transforming him back into the man who'd cooked omelets for his team. "I know a place. Greek. Open all night. The one your mother loved? The one where I want to take the woman I love. If she'll let me." Celeste looked at him, really looked. Saw the fear still there, but overwhelmed by determination. Saw the walls crumbling, rebuilt as bridges. Saw a future that would require work and trust and daily choices to be brave. "She'll let you," she said softly. "But Alexander? Next time you panic about us. And there will be a next time, because fear doesn't disappear overnight. Talk to me instead of throwing me away. I promise. No more choosing empire over heart." "Good. Because your heart is the only empire worth building." As they walked to his car, her phone buzzed. "Madame Rousseau, asterisk, Paris will wait for love. The position is yours whenever you're ready. But perhaps New York has more to offer than you thought. Asterisk. Perhaps it does." Celeste typed back. Asterisk. "Thank you for understanding. Asterisk. Asterisk. Understanding love is how I built my empire. Build yours well. Asterisk." In the car, Alexander took her hand. "Where to? Besides breakfast?" "My mother's. She'll want to know I stayed. Then your office." "My office? There's a letter on your desk. I'd like to retrieve it. What will you do with it?" She squeezed his hand, feeling the tremor of emotion he was trying to control. "Rewrite it. This time with a different ending." As they drove towards sunrise and second chances, Celeste thought about choices. The ones that led away from love and the ones that led home. She'd chosen Paris out of fear, protecting herself from more hurt. But in that parking garage, she'd chosen differently. Chosen to believe that broken trust could be rebuilt, that love was worth the risk of pain, that two people could build something stronger than either could destroy alone. The hardest choice wasn't leaving. It was staying. It was looking at someone who'd hurt you and choosing to believe they could do better. It was offering your heart again, knowing it could be broken, believing it was worth the risk. "I love you too," she said quietly as they stopped at a red light. In case that wasn't clear, Alexander brought her hand to his lips, kissing each knuckle like a promise. "It was clear, but I'll never tire of hearing it." "Good, because I plan to say it often. When you're brave and when you're scared. When you choose us, and especially when you're tempted not to. Every day, until you believe you deserve it. That might take a lifetime. Then it's fortunate we're just beginning." The light turned green. They drove forward together, toward breakfast and Marie's joy and a letter that needed rewriting. Toward a love built on choice rather than chance, on courage rather than convenience. Behind them, the airport continued its business of hellos and goodbyes. But for Celeste and Alexander, there was only hello, complicated, fragile, worth everything. The choice had been made. Now came the beautiful, terrifying work of living it. It was a slow Sunday morning in New York. Sunlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of a brownstone apartment in Greenwich Village, one far cozier than any penthouse Alexander had once owned. French jazz played softly in the background. A vase of fresh tulips sat on the windowsill, a quiet gift from Alexander's last market run. And in the kitchen, two people moved in perfect, unspoken rhythm. Him flipping crepes, her stealing strawberries from the bowl meant for garnish. "Those are for the plate," he teased, brushing powdered sugar onto the thin golden layers. "They're for morale," Celeste replied, her smile effortless, her eyes bright. They had been living together for 2 months. Not in luxury, but in truth. No more walls, no more boardroom secrets or hidden grief. Just two people learning each other's rhythms. How she took her tea, honey no lemon. How he muttered economic forecasts in his sleep. How both of them still flinched when fear knocked on the door. But they always answered it together now. Eleanor had visited last week, bringing a bottle of vintage champagne and a handwritten note. Asterisk, building an empire begins with breakfast. Asterisk, she'd stayed long enough to see that Celeste hadn't run, and that Alexander had truly changed. Not for her, but for himself. That was the only change that ever lasted. Outside, spring was blooming across the city. Parks filled with couples, corners burst with daffodils, and children chalked rainbows onto sidewalks that had seen too many gray days. It felt, finally, like a season worthy of a second chance. Celeste's phone buzzed beside the sugar jar. She checked it and smiled. Another message from Madame Rousseau. Asterisk, Paris will always wait. But New York, it seems, has bloomed under your care. Come visit us soon with him. Asterisk. Good news, Alexander asked, placing 2 perfect crepes on a plate and sliding them in front of her. An invitation. And a blessing. He nodded. We could go. Take a long weekend. Eat too many pastries. Fall asleep by the Seine. Maybe. She took a bite, closed her eyes. But right now, I like this pastry chef. He bowed slightly, mock serious. Flattery will get you more strawberries. They ate slowly, contentedly. No rush. No deals to close. Just the shared language of mourning and trust, rebuilt one small moment at a time. Later, they walked hand in hand through Washington Square Park. The street musicians were out. A little girl offered Celeste a daisy. Alexander watched the way she bent low to thank her in fluent Spanish. Her kindness so innate it still undid him. You never told me, he said softly, what you wrote in the new letter. She looked up at him, sunlight catching in her curls. You mean the one I didn't mail because I decided to say it in person? Yes, he said. That one. She stopped beneath a blooming cherry tree. I wrote, asterisk, dear Alexander, this time I'm not leaving. Not because I'm afraid, but because I'm ready. Ready to stay. Ready to believe. Ready to build, asterisk. He kissed her there, gentle, certain. Around them, New York moved forward. Horns honked, dogs barked. Someone shouted about fresh bagels on the corner. Life didn't pause for love. But love, when chosen daily, had a way of making the chaos feel like music. They walked on. Together. The conference rooms and jetways, the board votes and betrayals, the heartbreak and hesitation. They were part of the story, not the whole of it. The real story began after the choice. In morning coffees, late-night honesty, shared dreams, and the promise not of perfection, but of perseverance. They hadn't won because they were flawless. They'd won because they fought for each other. And because they remembered that love wasn't about running. It was about staying, and building, and beginning again. Always. Thanks for staying. Now please like, subscribe, and share this story. Thanks. See you tomorrow.